All right, enough of that. All right, it's time for what will probably end up being somewhat of a rambling video. Not sure exactly what direction this is going to go in, but we'll start with this. Today on the workbench, this is a NuTone IMA303L, and it's an L because it's the light elm colored one, not the dark walnut colored one. And this particular unit was manufactured in August of 1977. So it is almost 50 years old. It's 48 years old. And what makes it kind of unique, I'll disconnect a couple of things here so I can show you, is that this is a set that I actually rebuilt for a customer almost 10 years ago. And for the last almost 10 years, it's worked just fine. And then recently, it developed a problem. And you can tell it's one of mine because if you look at all the parts that were replaced, and some you can't really see, and then has an external audio jack, which is one of our things that we make up and add to sets when people want it, it's obvious to me that it's a set that I worked on almost 10 years ago. So it was sent in, well, let's do it this way. The customer contacted me and he described a very specific problem, which was they would turn the music on in the morning, and after it was on for just a few seconds, it started making a loud squealing noise on all the stations, on the master and on all the remotes. And classically, that would be a problem that could be caused by either a remote station or by wiring that connects the remote station back to the master station. So I gave him some basic troubleshooting to do to see if we could figure out where the problem was. And the troubleshooting, for the most part, consists of, this is the terminal board. This is where all the wiring from all the remote speakers gets connected. A 303 is a 3-wire system. You got red, center, and blue, and red wires go here, center wires go here, center wires go here and blue wires go here. The way a 3-wire system works for the most part is the center wires are common wires, so center and red makes the radio play in a remote station, and center and blue makes the intercom works in a remote station. So the initial troubleshooting would be you disconnect all the blue wires, disabling the intercom functions in thinking that could be a shorted wire or it could be a bad switch in a remote, which happens on the IS or ISA35s that were used with this system. That's where the problem lies. He did that. Didn't solve the problem. Then we went one step further just to make sure, sort of a belt and suspenders kind of idea, and he went ahead and disconnected all of the wiring from the terminal board. So nothing was connected here at all whatsoever. It was bare. And basically what you have then is a master station that's powered up by its low voltage transformer. It's connected to the antenna, and really what you got is a radio. There's no intercom because it's not connected to anything else. And he did that and would turn it on, and again it would squeal. So obviously it was a problem with the master station. At that point I told him there isn't any more that he can really do, and the only solution would be send it to me so I can work on it. So he sent it in. Like all sets, when it got its turn on the workbench 2 days ago, I set it up, powered up the master station on its own. Worked great. Wasn't perfect because it's still almost 50 years old, but it worked reasonably well. No squealing noise. So then I connected up 2 remote speakers and a door station, because that's sort of the usual setup here for testing systems. And they're known good stations, known good ISA35s, known good door station. Door station is just a speaker, so as much to go wrong there. Hook that up, all basic functions worked. Radio played in all 3 stations, master in the 2 remotes. The intercom would function. You could talk and listen from the master to the remotes, and the master to the front door, and the remotes to and all the different combinations. Fundamentally seemed to work. However, I noticed that there was a problem. And the problem was that here on the master station, you have 4 intercom buttons: talk and listen. So you have inside patio speakers, talk and listen. And then you have door speakers, talk and listen. When you use these buttons to use the intercom, and when you have the radio playing, pushing the button causes the radio to fade away and become muted. So when you're speaking on the intercom for communication, you're not speaking over the radio. The radio is muted, so it's silent. That all basically worked. However, I noticed that when you would use the door talk button here, you could talk to the front door station, which is over there on the workbench. However, the radio would play through the door station, which it's never, ever, ever supposed to do. You can have radio play at the master, you can have radio play on the remote speakers, but it's muted when you use the intercom. However, it's also the radio never, ever plays at a door station, ever. It can be the perfect installation, the perfect brand new system. Door speakers don't get radio. So when you would push door talk, the communication worked, but the radio played at the door station. As soon as I noticed that, I knew exactly what was wrong, because it's not my first rodeo. So what was wrong was this. Kind of hard to see. How about like that? Now you can see it. It's this little thing right here. This is a transistor. This happens to be the muting transistor on the main board in the master station, and this is what mutes the radio when the intercom is in use. Now, pulled it out and tested it, and it's not 100% bad. A transistor like that, when it's tested, should have a measurement of approximately 164. And I'm not going to get into exactly what all that means because nobody really cares but me. This particular little transistor right here, when it was tested, it has a rating of 11, which means it's not totally dead, but it's well on its way. So this was replaced, and the set was put back together to be tested, and the problem with the music playing at the door station when the door talk button was pressed was resolved. Now, was that definitively the source of the problem with the squealy noise? Yeah, maybe. It's difficult because since we couldn't duplicate what the customer reported was happening at his house here at the shop, you can only go with what you find that's actually wrong, and we found a transistor that was actually wrong that was creating a problem with the way the system operated. So it's likely that could be part of it. However, there were more things that I found that needed to be looked at while it was here, because we're not going to send back a set that isn't really functioning properly or well enough to be useful in someone's house. And the problems that we noticed were these 4 push button switches were hugely noisy when you would push them. And they were noisy, they were physically noisy. So the way you have to look at it is, it's a push button switch. In fact, I can show you one. It's right here. So let's zoom in on this and I'll explain to you what happens. These are the switches that came out of the Fellows 303 because they've been replaced. These are little spring-loaded push-button switches, you can see. And there's 2 sets of them because you have inside and patio talk and listen, and you have door talk and listen. They're exactly the same switches. They each are soldered onto their own little mini circuit boards, and then they're screwed onto the chassis. So what happens to these? These get hugely noisy. And hugely noisy means that when someone pushes the button like this, they go and make all this horrible noise. And I've actually seen them in sets sometimes that are so incredibly bad that when you push it, it makes incorrect connections inside the switch, and it can make a howling noise and other things. Not the problem the customer described, because he said it was not during intercom use. The squealing noise just happened all on its own. These are really bad. And these have always been a problem to some degree or another. 303s originally came out in 1973. And I would say that by the end of 1974, people had systems with noisy switches. They're not bad quality switches. They just tend to get really dirty, and maybe because of the way they're made or whatever it is, they get really scratchy sounding when you push them. And I have replaced lots and lots of them. The problem nowadays is that these have not been available from NuTone as a part, because what you have to know is that NuTone has absolutely positively no parts for any intercom system at all whatsoever anymore. None. So there aren't any of these available. And this customer set got a replacement set. It was probably the last best replacement set that I had, and it got put into his set to solve the problem. So what happens with these, and these little switches, the actual switch, the gray part with the blue stem and the spring, and these happen to be on these little brackets. They're crimped in place because the brackets is screwed to the chassis. These little switches were made by a company that's not in business anymore at all. And you can't find these anywhere, and you can't find anything that is a direct replacement for these that meet all of the parameters that you have to meet to put it in the intercom. It has to be the right electrical connections. It has to be the right size. The body of the switch has to be the right size. It has to be able to be crimped into the little bracket here to hold it when you screw it to the chassis. The length of the stem has to be the right length. So when you put the buttons on it, the little square button caps, they stick out of the faceplate the right amount. There's all of these requirements, and they simply do not exist. I have looked many, many times. So what do you do? Because this isn't going to be the last IMA303 that I have to work on that we have noisy and bad switches. This customer's IMA303 came into the shop. I started on it 2 days ago, and the amount of time it took to find the little bad transistor, that was almost nothing. The amount of time it took me to resolve the switch problems was not horrendous, but horrendous enough. So let me explain it to you this way. There's a lot of rules that I follow in what I do, and one of the rules is time changes everything. So what does that mean? That means that as systems and equipment get older and older and older, you start to see new and different problems that you've never seen before. When IMA303s, when they were 5 years old, they had certain problems that occurred when they were 5 years old. And when they get to be 10 years old, some of those 5-year-old problems are gone or been resolved, but then you have some new ones that take their place because now it's 10 years old. And when it gets to be 25 years old, you start to see new and different problems that you didn't see when it was 10 years old, because now, wait, it's 25 years old. In the case of this 303, it's almost 50 years old. And you see new and different problems that you have to figure out how to deal with. For instance, noisy switches. Another problem with this set, and we're going to get back to what we do with this in a second. Another problem with this unit was the selector switch. So this is your input selector switch. You have AM, phono, tape, FM. And when you want to listen to AM, you slide it up. When you want to listen to phono or FM, you slide it down. And then you got tape and phono, which in a lot of houses don't get used. This one gets used. The tape position gets used because the external audio jack that I showed you that we added to it 9 years ago is connected to the tape input. So that gets used in this particular case. The problem with these switches are the way that they're made and how they get used and the basic design of the switch. And we'll get to that in a moment. Problem with this one was FM worked great. You heard it play. Phono and tape work okay. AM, you flip it up to AM, it wouldn't play AM. It just nothing. But if you put your finger on it and you wiggle it and you push it and you hold it just right, the AM comes on and you can tune a station. But as soon as you let go and the switch sort of relaxes and goes back to its just hanging out position, the AM cuts out. So why is that? Well, it's because the contacts inside the switch are worn and loose and they don't make a good connection. And when you put your finger on it and you wiggle it around some and you hold it just right, you can get it to play. But then again, when you take your finger off, it stops. And that's a problem also because we can't send back a set that in most cases 50% of the audio output, the AM radio, doesn't play. It's not the radio problem, it's not a tuner problem, it's not an intercom problem, it's a switch problem. Again, another switch problem. So let's look at one of those switches and then we'll talk about what we do with all the switches because it's kind of the same. So this is the input selector switch. This fits a NuTone. You can put it in an IM303, an IMA303. There's also some more obscure models which are IM and IMA323s, and then there's the IM, IMA, IMB, IMC, and finally the IMD 313s, and then also the IM and IMA 406s. All use this switch. And this switch is a double pole 4-throw switch. Double pole means it has 2 sets of contacts across from each other all the way down, and the switch has 4 individual positions. And if you listen as I slide it, you can hear it. It's got little detents, it's got a little spring and ball bearing assembly inside that makes it snap into place. These were made by a company called Stackpole, and Stackpole was a company that made all kinds of switches and things, most commonly well known for making switches and things for Fender guitars. And lots of other things, I'm sure, but that's what they're well known for amongst a lot of people. Stackpole's been out of business for who knows how long. Probably more than 25 years. And these don't exist. There are no new ones. There hasn't been any new ones for a really, really, really long time. This morning, I did an intensive search online to see if I could find some modern replacement that fits the bill of this type of switch that could be put in all of those models I ran out for you. And the answer is no, I don't think so, because this is an old-fashioned kind of switch. What you have to think about is the IMA303 originally came out in 1973, which means that the design of the system probably dates back to sometime in 1970. These type of switches, this wasn't the new most revolutionary switch ever in 1970. This is a switch that this company probably made for at least a decade before that. So this is a switch, a mechanical switch, that's probably from the 1960s. Could be older than that, but I don't really know. And I'm just rounding numbers off here. It's not the kind of switch that's used in modern products today because it's big, it's chunky, it's old-fashioned. There's lots of other ways to make smaller switches because products are smaller nowadays, and all of these other parameters that designers follow when they design things. And so no real replacement for it. Also, double pole 4-throw switches are not the most common switches. Double pole 2-throw or single throw switches or double throw switches, they're fairly common, but 4-throw switches not so much. Also, one of the things that makes these kind of unique is it's got this really long stem on it right here. That stem is every bit of 3/4 of an inch long. Most switches, they'll have a stem that's maybe 3/16 or 1/4 of an inch long. So it's a very long switch because this has to be screwed to the front of the chassis, which then sits in the back of the faceplate, and it has to protrude through the opening in the faceplate enough that a person can grab it with their fingers and slide it. So if you found a double pole 4-throw switch with a stem that was only 3/8 of an inch long, it's not long enough because it's not going to stick through the front of the unit and you can't change it. So that doesn't work. And anything like this nowadays isn't really made, not that I can find, and I've searched a lot. This is a problem also. And these again have been a problem for a long time. And part of the problem with these, the reason that these go bad, because Stackpole did, I think, make good quality switches. That's why they're in Fender guitars, I would guess. The problem with this is that the top of the switch here and the bottom of the switch, which are really the same, are open. You have to imagine the intercom system is mounted in the wall of the customer's house, and the back of the unit is open to the inside cavity of the wall. And over time, 40, 50 years, dirt and dust and debris and stuff filters down through the wall cavity, and it gets inside the switch opening here, mostly at the top. Over time, the switch gets really dirty, and it becomes harder and harder to slide because it's all gummy and sticky inside. And what happens is, because the stem is so long and the body is fixed in place, it's not going to move, when it becomes hard to slide, you push on it with your finger harder and harder and harder and harder, and it like rocks and twists the stem, which is connected to the slidey part inside the switch, and torques it around, and that's what messes up the plastic piece, and it messes up the contacts. So when it does slide, after decades of torquing it around trying to get it to slide, the contacts don't make a good connection. And that's what was wrong with this customer's unit. So now that we've had the long-winded, detailed explanation of all of the things that can go wrong and why they go wrong and how difficult they are to deal with, what's the solution? What's the point? Well, the point is that, as I said previously, this will not be the last IMA303 or any one of those other models that I ran out for you that will come here at the shop to be repaired that are going to have dirty, noisy, broken, worn switches. As a NuTone service center, we have to figure out what are we going to do? Because you can fix a set electronically, but if you can't play the AM radio, or if the noise from the push button switches is objectionably bad, which lots of times it is, the customer is not going to be happy. This falls into the heading of another rule that I follow, and that rule goes, the older it is, the more you got to love it. And what does that mean? That means that if you're willing to work on something that's really, really, really old, you better be willing to sit there and do what needs to be done to solve the problems, no matter how difficult it is. And what's really weird for me is that I don't view IMA303s as being that old, because when I first started, they were still available to buy brand new. They were a new product that you could order from NuTone and go install in somebody's house. They weren't discontinued until the end of 1983, and then in 84 a new model came out. So for me, they never seemed that old. They never seemed like they're 50-ish or so years old. Some of them are older than that. Some of them would be 1973. That would make them 52 years old. So what did I do? Well, what I did was, and I actually did 2 of these because I was practicing. So I have 2 of those, and these, I have 2 of these. These are out of the customer set. I very carefully disassembled them. And inside the switches are the littlest, tiny, thin little metal contact that you will ever see. I cleaned them to remove all the oxidation and crud and stuff that had built up on them. And I cleaned the contacts. So what you have to think about is, like the push button switches, switches always have 2 contacts. Push button switch has one that moves and one that's fixed. And where the noise comes from is that, and this is how you have to imagine, this is the life of the switch. So when it's brand new, the 2 halves touch each other, waiting for someone to push them. But they're brand new. They're clean and they're shiny and they have lubricant in there to protect them, and everything is great. And when someone pushes it, the one that moves slides across the other one, it makes connections, and the world is good. However, over time, dirt and dust and crud gets into the switches and gets on the surface of the metal contacts. And then when you push it and they slide against each other, there's this grunge on the surface of the metal, and it scratches the metal. And the scratches are microscopic. So in some respects, it's kind of like rubbing sandpaper across itself. And the more you push it, the more scratches it makes. And the scratchy noise that you hear is the electricity that's flowing through the switch rubbing against the rough surface. That's where the comes from. So I took the switches apart. I cleaned the contacts on the part that slide. I cleaned the contacts on the fixed portion. Very carefully reassembled it all. Got all the little bits and pieces back where they go. Slid the switch back together. Put the spring and the little keeper on the front. Oh, and I put some lubricant inside, some dielectric jelly that will help make sure that it slides well. I think it's this one, that one. It gives it, this is not feel-o-vision. So this one is just as it came out of the customer set. This one's the one that I practiced on to clean and lubricated. And when you push it, it has a whole different feel to it. Put it all back together, practiced on that one. And then on the slide switches, it's a similar sort of situation. It's a slide switch. It's a different configuration, but the idea is the same. You have sliding contacts that connect with fixed contacts. The little post here on the back, which gets soldered to the circuit board, those are the fixed contacts, and the sliding contacts are inside at the base of the body of the stem thing that you can't see. So take my word for it. And when you slide them back and forth, they make different connections. So when you slide it, the connections are, it's in the right-hand position now, these 2 are connected. And when you slide it to the next position, these 2 are connected, and the next position, these 2 are connected, and the next position, these 2 are connected, and it's on both sides, both rows, this row and that row. So it connects these 2 and these 2 and these 2 and these 2 and these 2, and then so on and so on. So cleaned. The first time I did it, it was moderately successful. but not quite good enough. The little sliding contacty things you can't do very much with because they're made out of super thin metal. There's no adjustment or anything, and you don't want to bend them or mangle them because then they won't work properly. Because what you have to think about is when you slide them, they have to slide off one contact onto the next contact and and there's these little, like the way they're made in the fronts and backs, there's like these little curvy pieces that stick out. It's like a ramp, so it ramps onto the little contact, and it's, you know, it's a very small, tiny little thing to work on. But what I did was, to try to improve its connection, was I built up the fixed contact surfaces inside the switch, not down here, but inside here. I built them up to make them a little thicker, in thinking that perhaps there's some wear. I couldn't see any wear, but perhaps if you made them just very slightly thicker, because the sliding contacts slide over them. Like if this is the fixed contact, it slides over it like this and touches it on each side. So if you build up this just a little bit, when it slides on, it's got to grip it a little more because it's a little thicker, and it would make a better connection. So I did that. Honestly, the reason I did 2 of these was it was practice to come up with the right way to do it. And really, that falls into the second rule, which is the older it is, the more you gotta love it. I don't really want to tell you exactly how much time I spent horsing around with all this over the last 2 days, because you have to come up with a procedure that you follow, so when a set like this comes in, you already know what you're going to do with it. If it's got this problem, you've done it before. So then it becomes part of the ordinary stuff that you do, instead of being a one-off, because when it's a one-off, you can burn up a lot of time during the course of a day. If it's an ordinary thing that you do all the time, then it's just like, oh yeah, I gotta fix the switch. Maybe you're not that jazzed about having to fix the switch, but you know you can because you already have before, and you know what to do, and it sort of goes boom, 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 and all gets done. In the end, after all of that, the customer set works really well. And this little IMA303L for Elm is going to go back to the customer next week, and it's in good condition. We were able to come up with procedures to deal with the problems of the switches that are going to happen again and again and again. I hope you found this interesting, and perhaps for someone it will be helpful. If it is, give it a thumbs up on YouTube, because that'll help us just a little bit. There'll be a banner right here that shows you how to subscribe. Go to our YouTube homepage, click on the bell, and when you click on the bell, click on it to receive all notifications, and every time we post a new video, you'll get a notification and you can watch it. That's all for today. See you on the next video.